Welcome, everybody, to 3 Beards of Wrestling podcast. I'm your host, Shane, or Mr. Ping. I don't know if we're going by gimmick names tonight or not, but I forgot to add Ricky to the video since he's back.
It's fine. He's just a fill-in. It's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. I was
just a fill-in.
Thank you very much.
Anyways, below me is Ricky. Across from us is the Mind of Mayhem, Corey Cross. What's up?
What's going on?
Chilling, man.
A little bit of a beverage here before we start.
Yeah, definitely. Always need that.
Always.
We'll hop right into the business quick. Coming up July 29th, PCWA, where I take on Rob Knox and Joey P. If in Schuylkill Haven, PA. If you guys need tickets for that, hit us up. One of us will get you guys the information. Next up on our journey, I guess I would say. Friday, August 18th in Lewistown, PA. Seven Mountains Wrestling, where there is a Sky High title scramble match. That would be pretty interesting. Probably won't be a part of that. But if you guys need tickets on this, hit us up and we'll get you guys some info on that. Next up will be the big show of the year, September 9th, where Enzo and Flip Gordon and Marty Scroll will be there. Front row is already sold out. So if you guys want second or any other tickets, hit us up. And we'll definitely get you that information. Me, Corey, Ricky, Prince Shango when he hops on here, or Rob Noxious. Or hit up the Classic Championship Wrestling page and get that info there. And we're going to do something a little different next week just because, schedules don't add up too well. So we will be doing our podcast on Tuesday next week. Same time, and I'll leave it up to Corey to kind of introduce our guests.
We doing it right now?
Yeah.
Right now. Ladies and gentlemen, myself, the Mind of Mayhem, Corey Cross, and the 3 Beards of Wrestling podcast bring to you your favorite super heavyweights, the Mad Dog, Max Havoc.
What's going on, guys?
God.
Mad Dog, where'd you find that?
I didn't get paid for these.
Sorry to throw in there too, because we couldn't find the poster before we came live. But August 19th, CCW in Lebanon.
Yes.
So back to back nights, the 18th of August and the 19th of August.
I mean, you forgot the name. We can see it. Internet sensation Jack Vaughn is going to be there. I mean, lots of thigh slaps, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's great. So how are you, Max?
Yeah, welcome, Max. Let's
Thank you. I'm happy to be on the show, guys. Definitely.
Yeah. Definitely.
Right. Yeah. Remember, guys, if you guys got any questions for our guest or all of us in general, just put them in the comments and we'll put them through as we go through the whole entire podcast. So
I'm going to just apologize to everybody for my CTE brain now.
All right. It's quite all right, man.
I need somebody like Jay Money to follow me around and just tell me everything I did so I can remember.
Yeah.
I mean, this show is sponsored by CTE. It's okay.
It's all right.
All right.
It's like Sesame Street, the letters CT and E, you know.
I was just watching some videos. I was trying to find some really old stuff online, and I found some fan stuff that's out there that you got to really dig for. And it was one of our cage matches. It was, I think, Robin and Delicious versus me and myself and Mikey Rath. And it was just stupid. You know what I mean? I'm like, why can't I remember my cousins' names or my brother's name? Because, I go back and watch that shit, and that's why.
And
So,
that match was brought to you by CTE. Jesus.
Yeah. So it's funny that you brought those names up because I was just with my dad on Sunday, and we were watching the treasure show that they came out with, where they like find all the gear and stuff.
Yeah.
And they showed a clip where where the Rock handcuffed Mick Foley and did all the chair shots.
Yeah.
And he was telling me they did that with you, and I was like, I remember that.
Yes.
Yeah. They had to beat it by one.
I think it was like five or six chair shots, and we didn't really pull them. So
Times
and
that by
the second
10.
one broke my nose because they always said I tended to take, I always took chair shots like right here. It hurt. It didn't hurt. Yeah, it's the hardest part of your fucking head, people. But anyways, every once in a while when the chair would get bent, you know what I mean, I would look up to take that chair shot, and then I'd catch one in the face, essentially. And that's what happened there. And I just remember going, ouch. And all of us laughed and then kept doing the chair shots. You know what I mean? So
ouch. I love it.
Hell yeah.
That's it.
I love it.
So I say let's just jump right into this. I'll start out with an easy question just because, you know, we're just starting. So how did you get your start into professional wrestling?
So I was a wrestling fan from as long as I can remember. You know what I mean? Like when I was growing up, if you asked me what I wanted for Christmas as a little kid, it was a list of WWE shit out of the catalog, because back then we used to get the paper catalog. I'd circle everything I wanted. I had the sheets, I had the blankets, I had all the buddies, I had all the shit. I had the Ultimate Warrior jacket, which I would, if I could find that today, I'd be a happy camper. But you know, that's what I really wanted to do. You know what I mean? So that's always been a dream. So when I was in high school, a friend of mine named Phil Albright, he bought a car from a guy by the name of Jimmy Dio. And it was a used, he was basically, you know, I think it was, at that time he was a new car salesman, but he was a used car salesman, and, you know, things go as they go. He was definitely a used car salesman. But my friend basically said to him, hey, my buddy really wants to be a pro wrestler. At the time, Jimmy Dio was working for Pennsylvania Championship Wrestling, where like Edge and Christian used to work before they became big and all that stuff. It was, I would say, before you had really elite wrestling promotions, it was like, it was on the bigger side. You know, Jeff Jarrett came down at the time. They even let him bring the, you know, represent or bring with him the Intercontinental title when he had it and things like that. So it's when a lot of the WWE guys could come out onto the indies and make a little bit of extra money that way. So basically Jimmy Dio had a falling out with the guy who ran that company, and he signed a no compete. The guy who ran it was a lawyer, so he had all his ducks in a row there. You know what I mean? He was covered. So Jimmy signed a non-compete, and he couldn't wrestle in Berks County, which is where I grew up, or where he was popular at, Reading, Pennsylvania area, bordering Lancaster and a couple other places that were big for wrestling. And Jimmy couldn't wrestle in his hometown. So finally, when that non-compete was up, he needed to hustle up some money to run a show, and he wanted to do all this big stuff. And he found a couple ducks, one of them being me. But that's how I met Jimmy, is through a used car salesman. So when I first started training, Jimmy didn't have a ring. I started in February 1998 training. And I would say I went maybe five months or so before I ever got into a ring. So that's where my understanding of chain wrestling came. So later on, Jimmy kind of abandoned us with the Mess brothers. He kind of like, that was where we went and got into a ring finally. And Mess brothers bought their wrestling school from Jimmy Dio many, a few years prior. So he made a deal to go up there, and that's how I met Mark and Troy Mess, who I would say are the most important influence in my wrestling career. You know, and that goes for probably a lot of people.
Yeah.
But all in all, one of the best things that could have happened to me was that I met Jimmy Dio, and he was kind of a shitty trainer in terms of didn't have a ring, kind of hustled, all that kind of stuff. Because he didn't have a ring, I had to learn all that other stuff and learn to love it and understand it before I even got to do any of the stuff, the fun stuff that students, if you told them they couldn't get in the ring for a month, they might leave and go to some other school, we'll let them get them right away. Now, these days, there was no waiting, you know what I mean? And back then I waited 5 or 6 months to get into the ring at all, just to even bump. I learned all the chain holds. We learned all kinds of leg maneuvers and rest holds and all kinds of stuff like that we had no choice. So it was all grappling. It was all that kind of basic stuff, rolls. We did a couple falls on the concrete, but luckily we didn't have to bump on the concrete. But, sometimes the worst shit that happens to you can end up being a great thing, although you don't know that at the time. So, but Mark and Troy is where basically most of my training came in. So that's kind of who broke me into the business. I did probably, several hundred ring rentals with them when I was young. I've set up more rings than most people in the indies in this area, I think. You know what I mean? When we were with CCW back with your dad, I mean, we used to set up, me and your dad would be sitting there, Czar, J Money, all of us who were basically all on the show. We all we're setting up the ring, setting up everything that needed to be set up. So I think I've spent a lifetime setting shit up. That's why today you see me at a show, I usually walk right away. I've done enough.
Yeah, definitely.
So sorry, I got a little long-winded there, but yeah, that's it.
Hey, no, man. All right. Oh, excuse me. So, one of my questions I had to ask you was, so who did you watch to learn about promos? Like the top 3 people that you will watch to learn about promos?
Promos was probably, $1 Million Man was great promos. I don't know that I knew that at the time, but I mean, going back now, once I really wanted to kind of learn promos, maybe. Yeah. Flair, obviously, and any the Horsemen. I think that era of wrestling in general was pretty good promos. Dusty. So that's really, it was kind of like what was on WCW, NWA, or WWE. They were all doing a lot of promos then. So Saturday wrestling for me was half the show was promos, or setups. The little vignettes that they used to do for Perfect, stuff like that. Your matches were all squashes. So you saw a couple of the stars and they were squashes, and then all the rest was setup. So it was story building. So they all did a lot of promos. Somebody that taught me a lot, but I didn't know it heel wise. I mean, I used to fucking hate with my guts, my inner core. Like I truly hated Brother Love. You know what I mean? Like if anybody, I couldn't stand him to a point where like I wanted to throw my TV. I hated him so much. And it's like, how good of a job did he do? One of my favorite wrestlers was at the time growing up was the Ultimate Warrior. I mean, I used to paint my face like the Ultimate Warrior. I just loved his energy. He was awesome to me. And when he fucking beat up Brother Love, it was I can still remember in my head the excitement, how much I fucking loved that shit. And it was awesome to me. I hated Brother Love with all my guts, man. So I think that Mark was a really good promo guy too for the indies. And being around Mark and hearing him talk a lot was a big help to me, to learn how to cut promos. I think all my life I've always been able to speak really well in terms of like in front of people. I always been confident, I guess. So sometimes stuff just would roll off good, but to understand the story and how to make sure you're touching on points that are actually impacting the story instead of just talking and giving them a list of items to remember. You know what I mean? You got to bring out that emotion, and learning all that. I mean, Mark and all those older guys were really where it's at. I think today the promo game is pretty shitty. for let's just say 70% of the guys out there. You know what I mean?
I'm definitely in that 70%.
You definitely are. Sorry. We all can't be me. It's fine. But Ricky asked you about where you draw like your promos and your inspirations for promos. How about character development? Where does Max draw inspiration from for Max?
I think I've always struggled with early on how I got to be. You mentioned the bad dog. I think you said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
One of my first gimmicks, and the reason that I was bad dog was because I had a bad dog shirt on at the time, and so I got fired. Jimmy Dio fired me because I wanted to work for other promotions because he stopped using me. Essentially, he stopped taking me all these places. I was falling in, I was kind of up there with Mark and Troy, and he was doing his thing. Terry Frankowiak kind of got involved with him. What's up, man?
What's going
on? Hey,
we got another participant.
Yes.
So, when he fired me, I was doing his gimmick, which was Zeke Stoltzfus, the angry Amish biker. Yeah. So I came out to Amish Paradise and I had jeans and suspenders and a white shirt and did the whole wear the hat, straw out of the mouth, and did the whole Amish gimmick.
At least you made posters with it.
I did make one poster in that Amish gimmick against Mark Mess, June 12th, 1999. It was my third match in the business.
Oh
wow. So essentially I need a name. So he fired me. I went and did a show in Philly for a guy named Todd Amos, who was another fucking jackass that I can't even get into. There's too much fucking shit there, but Todd Amos was running a show in Philly, and I needed a name, and we sat there in the locker room and debated about it, and we came up with Havoc, and then Max Havoc, and then we were like, somehow I ended up being Bad Dog because I had a Bad Dog shirt on, and that's what I had to wrestle in. So I became Bad Dog Max Havoc that night, and probably wrestled a pretty shitty match. We're talking about match 5, maybe match 6 that I had in the business, and but to be honest with you, I've always just been a more exaggerated version of my either good or bad traits. You know what I mean? Like if I'm a face, then I'm just exaggerating my energy, my fucking just stubborn, just unwillingness to quit kind of situation. And I exaggerate that and turn it into a character. I think for character development, I mean, I always have struggled with it. I don't know, because I see wrestling and I saw wrestling as a fan. And I remember growing up, I would envision myself not as my own wrestler, but like I would take on the characters. When I was like sitting there playing wrestle with my friends, we would always take on the characters that already existed. You know what I mean? We would all pick somebody to be as opposed to come up with our own people. And I identified so much with those guys. But in finding my own character, I've always, I still today, I know that I'm, just this badass dude. I like to beat people up. I don't put up with shit. You know what I mean? As a heel, I like to be a smart heel. You know what I mean? I like to kind of get under their skin when they don't realize it at first, kind of thing, but still be able to be down home enough for a kid to understand it, and I think that's a good, thing to think about. You know what I mean? You got to be able to be, you watch a movie today, like for instance, you sit there and watch one of these Disney movies, and there's so many things in there that's just for adults that the kids just don't get. But it makes it like the adults have to sit there and watch this with their kids, but somehow it makes it interesting for them too. So I think it's opposite sometimes with wrestling, depending on the show you're on. You need to be able to entertain both levels, but so it's like you need to go over the kids' heads about some things, but make it simple enough that they understand that you're calling their mom and dad a fucking jerk. You know what I mean? And so they get pissed off about it. But character development is something I've always struggled with. I can see other people's characters really well. I'm great at sitting there and picking apart somebody else and giving them ideas. Max Havoc is just a fucking an asshole who likes to fight. You know what I mean? I don't put up with shit, and that's that. You know what I mean? And I'm an arrogant motherfucker when I'm in character, and that's who he is. But I don't know if it goes any deeper than that until I get a good story. You know what I mean? If I am somewhere, I can make it connect deeper with that person I'm wrestling and get into their character. But on the surface, it doesn't go any deeper than that.
I dig it.
Right.
Well,
Adrian, you want to jump on? We've covered promos, we've covered beginnings, we've covered development.
Okay. First of all, I miss you, man. It's so good seeing you.
Yeah, it's been a while, brother.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I hope you're feeling better.
Yeah. Not really, but yeah.
That's what I say too. It's all
right. So my question for you is, you have seen so much in this business. You have been a part of so much. Like whether people like give you credit or not, there are 3 people here I can tell you that you've sat and you've talked to and you've helped develop characters and stuff since you were talking about characters. What are some of the things in your time that you've seen that you think has been helpful toward the business, and what are things that you think that have been hurtful toward the business when it comes to a lot of these new guys who are coming in and into the business?
I think if we're talking about today, I think that the biggest problem with what's going on in the business today is that we've forgotten the difference between like the art of pro wrestling and being a trapeze act of sorts. You know what I mean? Like to me, what differentiates that's a word. What differentiates pro wrestling is that it's an emotionally driven response. That's what you're going for. You know, to me, that's what it is. So your goal in creating a match should be to get an emotionally driven response, not just that was a cool move, wait for the next cool move. It's not a, you know, kind of like a stage show. It's not just a stunt show. It's got to connect with people on a deeper level. And that's what's, in my opinion, being thrown to the side, because people are making it about the stunt show as opposed to people understanding a story and having it be about a story. And I think that people dismiss that indie wrestling. Let's just go here. Indie wrestling does not have to be what AEW is. That's not most of the fans on the indie wrestling circuit.
No. Most
of your fans are old time, real down home wrestling fans, you know, wrestling. And I think that we make that mistake because the people making the most noise and the people getting the most attention are your smart marquee type of fans who are online and driving those type of products and those type of that part of the industry. But the problem is that, you know, let's just use WWE's numbers and AEW's numbers. You know, WWE did $1.25 billion in 2022. AEW did 100 million, right? So simple math, that's 10%. So right now in the business, why are we on the indies catering? Let's double it. Let's say 20%. Why is everybody trying to cater 20% of the people who are going to wrestling shows?
Right.
WWE is about telling stories. You know what I mean? They have innovated their wrestling ability and their techniques. It's still about that. And I'm not saying you even have to emulate completely the WWE product. I wish more indie shows would embrace the fact that they're an indie show. It's a different product today.
It is.
It's not like it used to be a long time ago where like the indies led to the WWE, you know what I mean? Like, or WCW or NWA, whatever it was. You know, you used to have to be a great wrestler on the indies and then you got picked up. Today, they're not looking for that necessarily. You know what I mean? Of course, if you're a great wrestler, they might take you. They're going to find you. But besides that, they're recruiting, you know, college football players and they're recruiting athletes that they can train exactly how they want them to be trained. And they won't know any different. Take a guy on the indies and you got to retrain him for what WWE wants or AEW wants or whoever, because they already have their own style and their own knowledge that they have to, you kind of have to erase those habits in a way. You know what I mean? If you look at it that way. So why not be your own thing? It's different anyway. Most people are already paying for cable or they're paying for Peacock, right? Mm-hmm. Or they're getting that AEW channel already. So if they want to see that style of wrestling just as it is on TV, why would they pay to come to your show? Sure. To see subpar people do what the best people in the world are doing. And there's some great people in the indies. I'm not saying that there's not some talent there, but the best talent, you know what I mean? It's like, you're going to watch the best. That's what you're going to do. And it's free technically because they're already paying for it. So what does an indie show do that nobody else does? Well, it's right up there in your face. So you take these guys who are going to seminars and they're taking these seminars by very talented people, you know, indie name A, indie name B, name A, name B, whoever it is. And they're saying, hey, work the crowd with your match. And that's great. That's correct for where they are at, for what they're doing, and on the level that they understand and understand the business and where they are.
Right.
You should work the crowd with your match, but on a simple indie show, right? If the crowd isn't responding and you're not at the level where you can create that kind of psychology with your match, then you need to work the crowd in other ways. You can't ignore the crowd. If I'm an indie promoter and you're a young person in this business and you went to a seminar and they told you that, like I said, it is correct for what they, if that's where they're wrestling. If you're wrestling in front of those crowds, those smart mark crowds, those crowds that like that style, then absolutely, you got to learn that, and you got to learn it anyway. But most of the time, you're starting out and you're working for small shows in fire halls and places like that, in schools, in gymnasiums, and the people coming there aren't necessarily those type of crowd. So if I'm a promoter and you go there and you just took this seminar and you have the crowd sitting on your hands and you're not engaging with them to get them past that, am I going to book you again? Is somebody else on another show going to book you? Because the business should be about drawing money. So if I'm sitting here seeing the crowd as a promoter sit on their hands because you chose not to work them in any way, shape, or form, and they weren't on board with the match, but they could have been if you worked them right? You're not even gonna get seen because you're not gonna get to that next level. You're not gonna get booked on another show because you can't even draw a response from the crowd.
I know that's one of the things that I used to always, every time you would talk about, I would just kind of sit there and zone in, because you constantly talk about how to pull people in by doing some of the littlest things, just like the way you look and letting things sell and let things settle and sit. And you're right. Like, you see a lot of these other shows where everybody's moving. Like, it's like boom, 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 and nothing pans out. People are like, either, oh, that was a cool spot. Okay. Oh, it's the next match. All right, cool. They'll forget about it like 10 minutes later because somebody else is trying to do something else crazy or wild that doesn't sit.
And I got to come out and say, like, I'm all for it. I love the high spots.
Right.
I'm not one of these old guys like, get off my lawn, don't do any high spots. I'm cool with it. You know what I mean? Like, I think the business should be innovated for sure. Right. You know what I mean? It needs to change and progress. I think we're giving them too much, and we're giving fans too much power to destroy our bodies. Right. You know, we got to reel it back a little bit in terms of that, or what some of these young kids are doing. But, you know, when it comes down to it, we on the indies, I think, need to embrace that we are a different product. You know what I mean? Hit harder. I can't tell you. Look, and I'm not trying to try because, like I said, we'll say AEW right now, the talent level that's there is far beyond me, far beyond, a lot of places. They're great talents. But I turn them on and I see them whiff 3 kicks in 10 minutes when I'm watching it, and I'm thinking to myself, that's an embarrassment, not just to them, but it's like the wrestling business, like it's a joke. And that kind of stuff is what pisses me off. It's like you can't, and that's happening all over the place, so many places. All these people who think it's not important to build your foundation, to make it look respectable. That's one thing. I'll tell you what, if I did nothing else right, when I left the ring, I felt like, love me or hate me, that crowd had a certain level of respect for me because I made it look legit. I did. And I couldn't always roll right or jump well, whatever I didn't do, but I made everything else look fucking as good as I can, as good as I could. And I trained thousands of hours, never stopped training, and I probably, I've been in the business for 25 years, but let's just say active for 20 of it. And I actively was training or training other people for that entire 20 years. Right. And I learned something all the time. Just by going down to Mark Mess School, going up to your dad's school, Rob Knox's school. And then I go up to Mid-Atlantic Wrestling Academy. And I help people up there. I'm trying to help a lot of people, just spread some knowledge. And but you know what? I end up learning something too, even at this stage. It's like, stop saying that you don't got to train. Stop thinking that you don't have to train. Get to a school, do new stuff, just play around. My God, enjoy possibility of spots, and instead of saying, we'll just try it out there in front of a crowd.
You think that happens a lot with a lot of new guys and stuff, like who I wouldn't say has been around as long as you have, but like say somebody like 6 or 7 years in, or like 3 or 4 years in, get to the point to where they're like, well, I kind of know what I need to know. I really don't need to train.
Yeah. I think it's a common thing. I think that if you're wrestling all the time, and when I say all the time, I mean if you're wrestling at least once a weekend, twice a weekend, if it were me, would I still train? Yeah. But I think if you're wrestling to that level, you're wrestling that much, then you might be on a level where, if you're 5-6 years in, you're presenting a great product, your training is going to be in the ring unless you really want to try something new. And then I think you need to get to a school. We're putting people's lives in our hands. I think that's a huge part of what's dismissed today, that level of respect for just the fact that people are damaged all the time by this permanently. And we gotta take it more seriously. If you're doing something completely new, why aren't you doing it out of school? There's so many places you can go.
Right.
So many places you can go. But, you're taking not just your, health in jeopardy, but you're putting somebody else's health in jeopardy. If you're doing something that's, needs a little more precision. Right. I think that people overall need to be affiliated with school the entire time they're in the business. They need somewhere to go to bounce stuff off of, even if it's like, go give back. If you're not training, go sit there and watch, because it makes you part of it and it makes your brain active. It's like it gets you going, it gets you thinking, it gets you creating new stuff yourself. I sitting there watching somebody else try to figure something out, you're going to figure something out.
Right.
So go be in that environment. That's what we should be doing. If it's what you love and you say it's your life and you say all this bullshit that everybody wants to roll off their fucking tongue, then do it, live it. You know what I mean? Like, get to a school, give back, do what you say that you do when you go to these shows and say, oh, I deserve this amount because I do this. I deserve this spot because I do this. But you're not going to a school? The guys right now training in WWE and AEW are going to the school, going to their own school. You think that those people aren't going to the WWE training facility that are there, that are on that level? Of course they are. How do you stay on that level? The moment you think you're too good, somebody already passed you by.
Mm.
That's a fact.
Facts.
Oof.
Yeah.
Fucking love you, man. That's awesome.
When all four of us simultaneously just go, fuck.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the
So-
truth. That's the truth.
It is. Go ahead, Shane. You good?
Yeah. So let's change gears a little bit. So we kind of ask everybody this because, like, obviously we all have them. You don't have to name names if you don't want to.
Statute of limitation.
I would like to hear these names.
Favorite or worst road trip memory?
Favorite or worst road trip memory? Oh man,
We can't go to Tennessee. Try again.
there's just so many. Well, I mean, I would say one of the Tennessee trips that I took with Zarb, Damien Destruction, a couple people. Ryan Lute was on the one. Me and Zarb were at the time fentanyl was a thing. It was like, it was just starting to become illegal, right? So we get somewhere down south. I don't remember exactly where it was. It might have been in Virginia, the never-ending fucking Virginia that lasts forever. And we found this place that it had a spray that you sprayed under your tongue. And it was ephedrine, not fentanyl. Did I say that earlier? Yeah. Ephedrine, not fentanyl.
I was like, wait,
Yeah, holy fuck. Totally different subject.
yeah. Whoa.
Yeah, ephedrine at the time. And you're supposed to take one squirt in 24 hours. And of course, Zarb, Damien Destruction, and I, we did I don't know, 7 or 8 squirts under your tongue right there. And we were hallucinating. I kept seeing a train. There was a mountain range in front of us driving, and I kept yelling that we're going to hit the train. I couldn't move, literally, if I would have laughed, I think my heart would have popped.
Oh wow.
And that was both fun and really fucking scary. So that's just one. I got so many road stories. I mean, I used to travel with Mark Mess. We used to travel from fair show to fair show. And there was times where it was like 100 degrees, and we were he had an old ring truck. He had a box truck that we loaded the ring up into, and it would get so fucking hot. I don't know. I probably could talk about. We should do a podcast just on road stories,
Definitely.
At some point, and get a couple of people on, because I CTE brain. I can't even remember them all right now, but there's some fucked up and funny shit. We were going out to Tennessee another time. Jay Money was with us. We stopped at a Sheetz, and I got a burrito, and it was like a steak burrito or something. And there was hardly any fucking steak in it, and I was pissed off about it. So I was like, these motherfuckers. So I go back in there, and I said, hey, there's hardly any steak in this burrito, and it was only all the way down in the bottom. And they're like, oh, well, we only have to put 2.5 ounces of steak in. So I said, oh, well, then you can fucking keep it. And I threw it and bounced it off, and it sprayed all over the fucking, the store and everything. And I turned, and right there's a fucking cop just standing there at the counter, and I just fucking bolted out of there. And jumped in the car. I'm like, all right, we got to go now, because I just threw a burrito, and there's a fucking cop right there. I don't know. I could go on for hours just on road stories.
Oh man,
those are simple ones. Those are nothing.
Oh,
I'll tell you some privately that I can't put on blast out here in the open internet world.
Sounds good. Down to you, Ricky.
Oh man! All right.
These
You said something about psychology earlier, so that brings me to my next question.
Okay.
Who did you watch, or who would you advise people to watch as far as psychology wise? I wouldn't say top 3 or top 5.
Top 3 or top 5 psychology wise.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I think that as singles wrestlers, Flair, all the stuff Flair did in NWA and early WCW was all those stories were pretty on point psychology wise. Tag stuff, the Brain Busters, I used to love Demolition as far as just big guy kind of tag stuff, big guy, little guy stuff. I think that Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect were good psychology matches to watch. Perfect, as a heel, he's just my all-time favorite. Period. He's really my all-time favorite wrestler over. I think he's probably the most underrated guy in terms of, maybe not necessarily his legend now, but at the time he should have been doing more. They should have given him more. I mean, he should have been, I know he ran with the IC title for a long time, but I just think they could have done more with him. But I would say Flair, Hogan, his matches, you go look back at his matches, man, and it was just all fucking drama, and those stories they told with it, all drama. Great. Jake the Snake, the psychology in the ring, he's somebody, you want to learn the little intricate things that you can do. You were saying like the little looks and the little things and just the little suggestions that really draw people in. Jake's the guy for that. You go back and watch that shit. Well, listen to him with promos. I left him out of that promo thing, but I'll tell you what, he might have been the best promo guy, actually, Jake. It's hard for me to narrow that down because I think when I was compared to your generation now, as far as like maybe less than under 30, I think, I was catching the tail end of when it was all about psychology. And so there's so many guys that it was just amazing drama and match work. And I'm talking about maybe even prior to WWE, AWA and Lawler and some of those guys. I mean, it was all about psychology. That's what how they drew their people, telling a story. You couldn't, it didn't matter. They had so many workers back then that were just characters. They really weren't good workers, but they put them with good workers and they told a great story. And like the good workers didn't bitch about it and say, oh, I couldn't fucking do what I wanted to do. It was about going out there and creating a fucking vibe, man, creating that response from the crowd. That's what I want. I don't care if I got to do 2 moves. It's like when that crowd goes nuts and pops, there's nothing better than that. So if that's not your reward, you're looking in the wrong direction, and that's where I'm going to go back to what we were saying earlier, where you're not in pro wrestling anymore. You're kind of something else. You know what I mean? If the pop isn't what it is, what it's about, if that response isn't your goal, and what you go home with and say that was a good match, even though it wasn't perfect, because look at that response. That's what sold tickets. So that's what you should be worried about. I don't know if I answered the right question or not.
Trust me.
I'm cool with it.
I think you answered a couple at the same time.
Go ahead, Adrian. I'm going to let you go since we got about 15 left. Because I want Jason. No, I want Max's full attention on the final question.
Okay. So, in your opinion, and I know we've talked about this before, who do you think, like, in the business is the most overrated?
Mr. Ping.
I think that God, I don't know where to start. I got to really narrow this down.
Adrian Starr.
Sometimes
I always thought that I'm probably going to get a 50-50 response from this, but it doesn't matter. I always thought that now my CTE brain just came in and his name went away. Fuck. Samoa Joe.
Okay.
I think he's overrated.
Okay.
I think he's had some really great matches. But that doesn't mean that you couldn't put somebody else in his position and they would have been the same match. And I think that's maybe a judgment of being overrated, right? So all the guys on that level, they're there for a reason. He's a good worker. But the way I think that how the internet builds him up and how, the kind of smarty people kind of think he's a wrestling god and how they put him over on TV sometimes. It's just, I think he's overrated. Not because he's not talented, but because I think you could put anybody with his size and agility in that position and they'd be exactly the same, if not better. So there's definitely some other guys. I just can't think of any right now.
The list is forever expanding every time.
Yeah, I'm not sure where to start. But I think that's a good standard. You got to think about that, Right. And I think people all over need to think about that. What are you doing with your gimmick or your style that isn't replaceable by just another guy who looks just like you? Because there's, a lot of cookie cutter people out there, and I'm not saying taking anything away from them. Really, there's lots of talent, but so you got to stand out, and that's kind of what it's about. So if you're not doing anything to stand out, and I think that's another piece of advice I would say, like, are you easily replaceable by somebody who looks like you with the same ability? If you're, fit, what is it about you that's different? And if there isn't enough different, create some more differences. You know what I mean? Because that's how you're going to get somewhere if you're not somewhere already. If a company can easily replace you, then you're not going to be a draw ever because they'll just doesn't matter. The crowd, if you're switchable and you didn't give something extra, so you really got to think about that as an individual and own up to it and just figure out a way around it.
We had a fan question before we continue. Okay. Somebody wanted to know your thoughts on Chris Jericho.
Chris Jericho, I think, is one of the all-time greatest. I think his matches in the Attitude Era and not Attitude Era. He was in WCW, but in the 2010s and all that, I think were amazing. I think his entrance in WWE was like one of the biggest kind of anticipations of all time. I hated Jericho as a fan. I used to call him Generico. And I fucking hated him, But again, he was doing his job, so I got to give it to him for that. But I really fucking hated him, and that was way back in WCW before he really took off at all. And I just couldn't stand it. Every time he came out, I'm like, "What the fuck do they got this guy out here for?" and I wasn't in the business yet, so I didn't know anything about it. But I hated him. But now you look back, he's one of the best of all time. I think today. He's kind of like carnying him up over there and just taking it, just doing his thing, and it's like his little playground. I don't know that everything he's doing today is great for the business or AEW, but he's entertaining enough, I guess. But that's what I think about Jericho.
All right. We good, guys? Anything before I get the heavy one?
Nope, we're good.
All right, we got about 10 minutes left here, Max. Yeah. It's not a fat joke. We're all fat here, But what is today? In 2023, July 2023.
Yeah.
Older Max Havoc. If you could go back to day one of training, day one with Dio, what advice do you give yourself?
Today, one of the biggest issues that I'm dealing with is the damage that I did to my body that maybe wasn't necessary. And it's like, we've all heard it. All the wrestlers before you, guys in my position are telling guys in younger positions, and guys that were in my position then were telling me to not do unnecessary, damage to your body by taking bumps that aren't going to pay off in the long run. So when I think back to some of the bumps that I took, I think that people don't necessarily remember them anyway. I used to take a lot of hard back bumps on the outside. And my back really isn't a problem, but I just think overall, like my body in general is just a mess. My knees are jacked beyond belief. I got joint problems, shoulder problems, and some of it just could have been, prevented by not doing so many bumps on the outside. You know what I mean? Bumping off the stage onto the floor. Why? Bumping off the ring onto the floor, just to the floor, not through a table, not through. Why? You know what I mean? Like, it depends on what the situation was, but to do it once in a while is one thing. To do it as much as I did it at one point in my career, I think I'd go back and say, like, what I'm telling other people, and it's about the story. So tell a better story and do less of the damaging. That's probably what I would tell myself. The other thing I would tell myself, there's really two parts, because the other part is that you need a backup plan, no matter what your goals are. You need something else going on in life. And, that's a huge mistake that I made. I loved what I did in my 20s in the wrestling business. I lived my best life. No doubt. I went where I wanted to go. I traveled all over the country. I loved every moment of it. However, I had no foresight into the fact that there's going to be an end to it. And there, in most cases, let's just say 95% of the cases out there, it's not going to lead to a living. It's just not, I think I came to a point where I didn't care so much about the money or anything in terms of, like, if I thought it was going to take off and do a living, but I just loved what I was doing. But that doesn't mean you can abandon a career. That doesn't mean that you can abandon every other opportunity you have and give it all away for a hope and a dream. Because everybody says, while you're doing all this stuff, people are going to be like, oh my God, it's awesome. You're living your dreams. You're doing it. You're doing what nobody does. But when it's all said and done, and you don't have the payoff at the end, you don't have the fame, you don't have the money, you don't have all that stuff, and it's not likely going to happen. Those same people who were patting you on the back and encourage you because you were doing what they couldn't do are pointing their finger at you and go, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Oh, well, maybe if you didn't fuck around with wrestling for so long, maybe if you didn't do this, maybe if you didn't do that, you wouldn't be struggling. And you get that judgment. So it's like, nobody tells you that when you go after your dreams, when it's all said and done, doesn't work out, that you're fucked if you don't have a backup plan. And, I live my life now paying that price. So I gave everything up for wrestling. And I'm not doing that as a martyr. I'm just saying, like, I shouldn't have. You shouldn't. Nobody should. It is a possibility, not a guarantee. And if you go in to anything else in life, if you were like, I don't know if I'm going to win the lottery, I better not change. I better not quit my job. Well, making it in the wrestling business is like winning the lottery. Don't quit your job because you played a lottery ticket.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's just an unfortunate fact of life. But had I paid more attention to my career, I'd be making more money right now. I'd have a backup plan. I'd have a better career. I wouldn't be in the struggle that I am. At 45 right now, I'm really struggling financially. I'm struggling with my health. I'm struggling with my mental health. And, that a lot of people are. And I think the society right now is breaking us all down even worse. And our economy is kicking people who are struggling right in the fucking teeth. And it's hard every single day. But if I had just said that I need to face reality and understand that sometimes all or nothing isn't the right way to look at it, then right now I'd be better off and I'd be okay. And I'd be looking back. You know, I've looked, unfortunately, I wish we had a little more than 5 minutes here, but over the years, I've really looked back and I've gone through waves of real spite towards this business because, you know, I wake up in pain, you know, as many wrestlers do. And, you know, it's like because of some other circumstances in my life, I never got to close out my physical wrestling career the way I wanted to. And I feel honestly that, you know, it's like, this is like an animal, this business. You know, I've been gone for a couple of years, and when you're gone for a couple of years, you really disappear. You know, the business goes on and just eats up some other soul. You know what I mean? So now I'm coming back and I'm kind of breaking back into the business after a few years of being totally separated from it. And part of that is because of my mental health. You know, nothing has driven me in my life more than pro wrestling. And it's something that has both hurt me, but it's also saved me, you know, as a person. It's saving me right now because before I got reintroduced in the business, before I started getting involved with some other people, you know, I got involved with, you know, Rob again, you know, CCW again a little bit. I started going to Mark Mess School, and I also started going up to the school up at for Matt Silks and helping with him and his students and building other people's, you know, I want to say I feel like I become a mentor to some other people. And because of that, it's keeping me, myself, you know, I have to be responsible for myself now a little more. And I was getting to a point where, you know, I over the past few years, I've been suicidal. You know, I've really had some mental health struggles. And I saw myself sinking and sinking and sinking. And I thought to myself, if I don't get in my own way here and give myself a purpose again, then I'm going to be really sick. And I may make a very sick decision, just as many people do. And, you know, I lost a partner to suicide. And, you know, it's a dangerous fact in our world that more people are committing suicide than ever before. And you need to utilize your tools. I know that wrestling is important to me, and I know that I want to be a part of other people's. I thrive on training and teaching other people things, and those people now I have a connection with, and it's given me a reason to totally overlook the possibility of making a decision like suicide. And I still have my low points, but I can bounce back from it because I've given myself this tool. So as much as, you know, the wrestling business has caused some problems, I'm using it right now again to help save me and motivate me in life, get healthy, and be, you know, who I can be in this business. My goal is to go on and run shows and open up a school somewhere where it's not stepping on other people's toes, completely on my own. And I think I'm an excellent trainer, and I am starting to do more seminars. Are we all right if I go another minute here?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Floor's yours.
So I'm looking to do seminars, and I'm not expensive, but you know, one of the things that I do well is just kind of pick apart and I translate how to kind of do maneuvers well. And it's always good to have more eyes that can pick stuff apart. And if you're a student, this is what I'll end with. You know, there isn't anybody on the Olympic team who had a coach who said, yeah, that was okay. We'll go, you know, that's good enough. There's not a single one. You know what I mean? What level do you truly want to be at? Because if you want to be at the best that you can be, whether you're going to choose to be a WWE person or an AEW person or go any further, or this is just you want this to be a weekend hobby, that's fine. But you should still want to do it at a level of excellence as much as you can and represent the business and protect our business. And that's what needs to happen. Again, we need some more gatekeepers building trust in the fact that this business is respectable. And there's none of that out there right now. And so if you're a student, don't get yourself around people who are going to pat you on the ass and tell you did a great job, whether they watch the match or not, because that's what a lot of people will do. Go find somebody who's going to tell you everything that was wrong with it in a respectful way. And that's what I do. And I tell everybody, it's not that I'm trying to be negative. You know what's negative? Letting you think it's good enough and you never getting better 5 years from now because I didn't tell you. That's negative. That's more negative than me just saying, hey, dude, you need to do this better. How about you do this? Try this, try that. Put your leg here. If you can find somebody who can tell you what you can do better, that's the most positive thing they can do for you. And I'll end with that. All right. Thank you so much for having me on. I hope I didn't sound like a fucking old man, whiny bitch.
No.
But
so remember, guys, Jason, you're going to get covered up here for a second. July 29th, PCWA in Schuylkill Haven, PA, where I take on Joey P and Rob Noxious. If you guys need tickets for that, hit one of us up. We'll get you the info. Next up, Friday, August 18th, in Lewistown, PA. Again, if you guys need tickets for there, just let us know and we'll get you that. We do have the TikTok sensation. A lot of leg slaps there.
Right. The next night in Lebanon too.
Yeah, the next night in Lebanon. The 19th.
Yep.
And then September 9th at the old McDevitt High School, where Enzo and Marty Scroll and Flip Gordon will be there. If you guys need tickets for that, you already know. Hit us up and we'll get you guys that info. And remember, guys, next week we are not doing Monday. We are doing Tuesday because of our guest next week. And I guess I'll announce. Well, Corey, you want to announce our guest for next week?
I'll let you do it. Go ahead. You can do it.
Let's do Adrian because he was late.
Hey, there was a reason why I wasn't here. But
go ahead.
I will say this. July 25th, ladies and gentlemen, we will have Mr. Marty Scroll joining us here on 3 Beards of Wrestling.
Definitely. Can't wait for that one. That one's going to be pretty cool.
Right.
A for effort, kid. A for effort.
Yeah. But other than that, thank you, Jason, for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Max, thanks for everything. Thank you for everything. I speak for all of us when I say, like I told Mark and Troy and Rob, and without you, there is no us. So thank you for everything.
Thank you so much just from this podcast. I'm not even lie to you. I wrote so many notes, man. I took so many notes down. I learned so much just from this.
Right on, man. I enjoyed it. Have me on again sometime, and I'll maybe we can
I'd
talk
love
about
to do round two.
Some more stuff.
Definitely round two.
Love to do it.
Good one, guys. Thank you.
All right, Max. Thanks a lot, man.
Yep. Peace out.
Yep.